Hey everyone, welcome back to the REI Hot Seat. This is our second episode, and I've got the regular house, we'll call him the resident realtor here, Jacob Campagnaro. He is an investor-focused realtor here in the Golden Horseshoe. Also happens to be my brother-in-law, and he really knows his stuff. So
right on.
Like you, Jake, so I want to keep bringing you on
happy
here.
To be back, Andrew.
Anyways, okay, so Jake, for those of you who missed last week, this show is about analyzing deals. So we may do a couple of episodes when we're talking about market and things like that, but today we're analyzing yet another deal. Last week's episode was great, so if you missed that one, take a look at that video. I will say that I think you said it was tied up now.
It is.
Yeah, that deal's tied up now.
It is. So these everything's in real time, right?
Yeah,
so
everything's in real time, yeah.
Sometimes these deals go quick. So we always have a link, right?
Yeah.
And, if there's any interest, you can go right to the link, contact us directly, and we can always talk about it.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll share that at the end of this episode. Okay, so tell me about today's deal, place. What is it? Where is it?
Yeah, for sure. So we're doing something a little bit different this week. Last week we went big multifam. I think we were looking at 21 units.
Okay.
This week I wanted to bring it down to a 2-unit. A duplex. Just mix it up, right? Every each episode we want to talk about different things. I'm working on something for maybe a week from now or 2 weeks, which would be 24 units.
Okay, yeah. So check back soon.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff. So
is this is a duplex? Can we share the address, or we want to be more general?
We're going to keep address off market right now.
Okay,
off the podcast, which we'll most likely do with most episodes.
Is this an off market deal?
It's not an off market deal.
Okay, so it is listed.
It's on market.
Okay.
It's not my listing.
Okay, not your listing. Okay.
I've got permission to share it, but it's not my listing. So
so we'll leave the address off for now.
Yeah, we'll just
so we can probably give some more information about the city.
Sure. So this is located in Hamilton.
Okay, Hamilton.
It's a down the mountain. Okay, nice little area. It's by Gage Park. It is close to the stadium. Ticats. Good renting neighborhood. Good family neighborhood. The reason I like this is I actually found it not under the duplex section, but rather under the single family section of MLS. Right, which is why I wanted to bring it on and talk about different ways to source deals.
Yeah.
So this is I found it on the residential section, not
so
the
would you
multifamily.
say like this isn't ideally listed from a seller standpoint?
Yeah, I would say this is more of a conversion, right?
Okay.
This is an opportunity.
Okay.
I had a client of mine, we were looking for commercial. That was the original mandate. Long story short, we had a conversation about needs, wants, goals, and we ended up realizing that, hey, maybe going the residential route is a better option for this particular client, right? Which is why I wanted to bring this on. Yeah,
the key distinction, less than 5 units with most banks, you're going to be considered residential.
Correct.
Once you're 5 units and more, most banks, you're going to be considered commercial from a lending standpoint.
Yep.
Changes the process completely. So for some, that's going to be a big advantage.
Yeah.
Let's get into
let's dive into it.
What this building is like.
So yeah, beautiful renovated home. It was historically a duplex. So at one point in its history, it was converted to a duplex.
Okay, is it like a brick
it's
building?
Brick, 3-story.
3-story?
Yep, typical.
Oh, okay, so that's 2 units above grade.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. What they did was eventually at one point, again, it was converted back to single family.
Okay, right? So now it's single family?
It's single family.
Okay. Does the zoning allow for like a duplex, triplex?
It does, right? So zoning,
you can even go triplex there?
Yes, you can go triplex here.
Okay.
So we'll get there.
All right, so we'll dig into that.
It gets interesting.
Okay, so we were talking about fit. Just before we go any further, who in your head is this the fit for? Like, what's the ideal buyer profile for a building like this?
That's just why I brought up, like a case study, like a specific client, right? This is a perfect buy for somebody who has a little bit of cash lying around, has the money to cover the renovations, right? Because remember, it was converted back to single family.
They're gonna have to renovate it.
There is going to be a few items, right? But somebody that's wants to pick something up right now. The market's a little down in the residential sector, and that's why I wanted to bring this on.
Yeah, okay, because this value reflects lower because it's residential.
Correct,
okay.
Right? The duplexes, the triplexes, the single families, those are down further, about 25-30% down from peak, whereas the multifamilies, commercial, has been staying a bit stronger.
Okay.
Right? So we said, hey, let's go find a deal. Let's wrap this up. Let's do a little renovation and find a cash flowing property that has more upside with a potential third unit.
Yeah.
Or in, 2 years, my crystal ball, says 2 years, we're going to be in a better position with the interest rates, right? The market's going to come back, maybe even a year and a half from now. And it might be a great opportunity to either refi or even sell and trade up to that bigger multifamily commercial asset class.
So you're thinking more like this is for somebody maybe who hasn't yet dove into the 5 units plus, 6 units plus, and this is kind of getting your feet wet, and then you're working your way up, maybe potentially.
So you have, let's say you have,
later.
400, 450 cash.
Yeah.
Right. You just refied. It's a HELOC. It's something. you're finding a hard time finding commercial buildings. I know many people have that issue right now, and you want to get into something that's going to cash flow.
Yeah, you can take this, convert it into potentially a triplex.
Correct. We'll dive into some numbers here.
So approximate size of the house?
So approximate size of the house, I would say it is a bigger home.
Yeah.
I don't have exact size, but let's call it
like maybe 2,000 square feet of upgrade.
About that.
If I'm thinking of that type of building down there, Gage Park, for those who don't know, like that's kind of a nicer area, not on the mountain, more south.
Yeah, south of Maine.
South of Maine. So if you've driven around Hamilton, things get a little nicer the further south you go. Further north, you get closer to Barton and all the industrial stuff, and it's not quite as nice.
Yeah.
About 2,000 square feet. What are you thinking that it could be acquired for?
We had this down at around $825 was our number.
Okay.
Right. So for a single family in that neighborhood, that sounds a bit expensive.
Is that what they're listed for, or is that?
No, they're listed lower.
They're listed lower.
Right.
Oh, so they're fishing for offers.
Yeah. And $825 for a single family in that neighborhood, people might go, even the original listing price that people might say, oh, geez, that's kind of expensive for a single family. But you got to see beyond that and see the value in what you can do immediately and what you can do in the near future. Right.
Yeah, so it's totally based on hypothetical, like what could be done. Which, of course, if the zoning's there, and it's been a while, like I've heard of people getting allowances to do triplexes, which I don't know what zoning that requires. So maybe we can cover that.
And we can even touch on garden suites.
Yeah, garden suites is a thing that you can do, but those are. At present, I think the cost of doing so is a little prohibitive.
Correct. So we'll go through it. So this is currently single family, but it had all the makings of a duplex, right? So it had the rough-in plumbing for the kitchens. It had it already had a bathroom upstairs.
So the rough-ins are already there. You don't have to do any new plumbing.
No, they just basically.
So you literally just have to put a partition wall in and then some fireproofing.
So the fireproofing was even there as well because it was originally a duplex. Right.
But in the permitting process, I guess you just have to show that it's there.
There's going to be a little bit of
work. You have to make a hole and show that it's there, probably. I don't know how that process would work. Obviously, you'd have to speak with somebody in the city to confirm. But
right. So we had this down. So upper level, which is the actual second floor, which is the bigger unit, we had down for about $2,600 rent.
Okay, so we'll cover the rent. So
we'll start with rents.
Rent 1 would be the upper, and that'll be $2,600, and then we have rent 2 would be the lower,
which was $2,200. Yeah, and we also had a client to rent out the garage. There's actually quite a nice garage on the property.
Okay.
And we had that down for about $500-600.
Okay, we'll call it $500. So we've got purchase. Then what would we be looking at for like a renovation if you had to ballpark it?
Yeah, so we actually went through the property with a contractor, and we came out for about $20,000 to $25,000.
That's all it would take
to get it functional. Yeah.
Okay, so just $25,000 to get it there.
Yeah, and then we threw a contingency in for another $5,000.
So purchase and improve is equal to, let's just add this up.
So purchase, closing costs, and improvement, we had $267,500.
That's just out of pocket.
Out of pocket.
Based
cash
on
to close.
Based on cash to close. Okay, and how are you coming up with that number? So you're figuring on 20% down plus the actual renovations themselves.
We did 25% down.
Yeah.
Okay. We did land transfer tax, $12,975.
Okay, at an $825 purchase.
At an $825 purchase. I always use Rate Hub.
Okay, so you just went to Rate Hub, found a deal. Yeah, in this sheet I'm using, by the way, anyone who wants this, you can grab it on my website, andrew-hines.com. And also, before we go any further, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you get notified about these videos, because there's new deals that are active deals that you could have an opportunity to take a look at before they're tied up and maybe even bid on. That'll be Jake's department there, but make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Okay, so now going through, I have a land transfer number auto-calculated on the sheet. Obviously, you can double confirm it with online calculators, but it's there. So yeah, about $12,000 you said?
Yeah, I had like $12,975. Almost 13.
Yeah, $12,975. I had the exact same number.
And then we have about $5,000 for legal fees, closing costs, land titles. It's a little high.
Yeah, that sounds a bit high.
But again, I always run my numbers a bit conservative.
Okay.
Right? We want that buffer, right?
So you said about 225 in. I've got about 220 on this sheet. And this doesn't really work as a BRRRR, does it? Like if you're only putting in, or do you think you could still go back and maybe even get a refi and pull that money back out?
Well, I think you can definitely refi. Like even if, and this is why we really liked it, is because the basement ceiling height works, the parking works. There's plenty of parking on this property. So there might be a potential here for even a third unit.
Yeah, that's what I would really want to explore.
Where things get interesting.
So the ceiling height in the basement's good. Is there egress to the basement?
There is.
So there's a walk down.
There's a walk down. It's not, obviously there's no egress windows. There's no fireproofing.
You can cut those in. That's easy.
It's an unfinished basement.
But that's very workable. So that I would be super keen on. So maybe we'll just run the numbers as a duplex and hypothesize about triplex.
That's correct,
Yeah.
right? That's the way I would do it.
Okay, so 855 would be your total in, not kind of paying attention to what your financing structure is. That's just the asset plus the improvements.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course we're going to look at how much you got in the deal, which was that 220-ish, 25,000 that we talked about. Okay, so let's add up these total rents.
I have 63,504 with a 2% vacancy.
Okay, so 63,600, and then we'll add how much vacancy?
I had 2% in here.
2%. 62,328. Okay, so what are we looking at for taxes on the building?
Yeah, so taxes, we pulled the actual taxes of 3,168.
Okay.
We had an insurance quote of 2,160.
Remember, always take a look at your policy terms. Make sure you're comparing apples to apples when you're doing that. But yeah, let's keep going.
Maintenance, because it's brand new renovated, we ran that a little bit less. We have that at 2,222.
Okay, so you got a little lower. So
Yeah, everything was recently renovated on this place.
you're basically 3.5%. So we can play
4%, yeah.
we can play with that number. Like sometimes when I want to play sensitivity on something, I'll highlight it and I'll just come back and say, what if?
Yep.
Like what if that's different?
Yep.
So it's always a good practice.
And that's it, right? And that's the beautiful thing about a home inspection as well.
Yeah.
Right. You get your home inspection. The home inspector comes through, says, hey, on the surface, everything looks great. But, this might need some attention. That might need some attention.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you go back to the performa and start, changing more,
Well, that's
working
why
on
I
things.
build in life cycle. I mean, some people don't want to look at that in the early years because they know maybe my rents are a bit low, or I'm going to get them up, or I need time to stabilize. In this case, I'd want to build in a number that kind of, as I've said in the past, like if I know my furnace is going to last 20 years, I want to amortize 20 years. And then if it's 10 grand divided by 20, I want to build that amount into my maintenance. Just so I have it in my head, hey, cash flow isn't as good as I think it is because I've got this expense coming up.
And that's something that, I'd like to mention as well, right? Is a lot of people get kind of stuck on the performa when the actuality is all this is coming into your bank account.
Yeah.
Right. Other than taxes and, insurance, which is you could pay monthly.
It's coming into your bank account.
It's coming into your bank account.
Yeah. So then
right?
you just want to build up a little bit of a reserve, which I do on my properties. That's very common practice. Okay. So utilities wise, if it goes to duplex, will it be separately metered, and what would be separately metered?
So what we usually do here is we hydro split, right? And then for gas and water, we do proportionate share, right?
It's recovered then from the tenants. So it's like a 60-40 split?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So based on that, then I'll just leave utilities empty. There's no common.
So that's what we've done. I've a number of these duplexes, and we do find tenants that are willing to pay that.
Okay. So then management wise, let's just assume whoever buys this could self-manage it.
Yeah,
we can play with that number again. I'll put a highlight on it and we can just say, hey, how would that affect our number?
I ran it here, Andrew, at 4%.
Okay.
So very basic management.
Okay.
I do have a manager in the city that does manage 4%, 5%. Obviously, there's extra fees for
releasing.
That,
like
right?
when you lease for a new tenant, that's where they're going to want a leasing fee and stuff like that. So you gotta figure on that. Of course,
inspection fees, right? If they go to the property, they may charge you for an hour or something like that.
Sure.
But it just depends on what you need, right?
For me, I would self-manage, and I have self-managed my buildings. I would pay a leasing agent sometimes, but I actually like to be involved in the leasing of my buildings to interview the tenants that go in, just because then I know who's in there. They have a relationship with me to some degree. And then, of course, then I create the separation. If you have maintenance requests, here's where they go. Here's how you do all that.
Yeah. Someone I look up to quite a bit in the leasing area, in the duplex ownership kind of area. We sat down not too long ago, and he was saying, he takes a meeting with every single tenant. Doesn't matter if it's from a realtor, from the property manager. He says, no, I'm going to take him out for coffee. I buy him a coffee. I sit down and I talk with the tenant.
That's time well spent if you don't want headaches.
And that's it. And he said it's been life-changing for him, right?
Oh, yeah. Connecting with the tenants you're going to place is huge. I highly, highly recommend it. And then also have a process. We've gone through on my podcast many different ways of screening out tenants. Definitely recommend checking it out. So landscaping and snow removal, how would that be handled?
Landscaping, snow removal. So again, on these duplexes, we normally have, we'll supply a lawnmower and we have the tenant cut the grass.
And then what about snow removal?
We supply salt and the shovel, and we get the tenant to.
And then that's generally agreeable for tenants,
right? Yeah. Look, this is my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to have their own. Some people are going to say, well, it's you can't force the tenant to do it. You're right. You can't force the tenant to do it.
But if they're agreeable,
they're agreeable to it, and you pick the right tenant,
landscaping's no problem. That's easy to do. I've heard people say that there's an issue with having snow removal done by the tenant. But that being
liability
said,
and
liability issue. But I've also had like many stories of just tenants do it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty common thing.
We drop a bag of
Yeah.
salt off. Here's your
Yeah.
shovel. Here's your salt. Make sure you salt your path, right?
Yeah.
Keep an eye on it, right? All of this stuff, even with the grass cutting, you don't want to let your grass get crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you want, you can build in a contingency for that.
Yeah.
But again, I like to,
Mhm.
I like to sit here and say, okay, well,
Yeah.
9 out of 10 times the tenant's going to do it, and they're going to be okay with it. And
Yeah.
it's pride of ownership almost, right?
Right.
They take it over. So
Okay, so let's run through some mortgaging numbers now that we've got our cash flow sort of figured out.
Yeah.
Cap rate is looking to be around 6.23%, which traditionally I'd be pretty excited about a cap rate around that number. Now, of course, your purchase is going to have that added amount of 25 grand on top, so you're really in for 850. Keep that in mind, because I'm not going to run this as a burr. I'm just going to suggest that we're adding in an amount on top. So in terms of an amortization, we can still get 30-year AMs.
Yep.
Interest rates, we're probably looking around, 5% even?
I ran a fixed, right? I said, let's
From
realistically, someone's going to try to pick this up right now, and it's completely personal preference, right?
Yeah.
But, are you going to go variable right now? You're going to go fixed. So variable right now, I just got a quote yesterday from BMO, variable 4.33%.
Okay.
Okay. Fixed 5.3.
5.3. So I'm going to run the 5.3.
And that's what I did.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I ran 5.3 just to, again, run that kind of as a more
So-
conservative.
So now going down through the numbers, I mean, cash flow, first thing to note, $640, no problem with that. The thing you do have to, acknowledge here is there's cash in the deal. Total investment here, I've got it actually at, 179, and then we would add the 25,000 to that, that you're leaving in the deal. So I've got about 204,000 left in the deal at that point. That's based on closing the deal and then adding in 25 in renovations. You could go further and you could say, well, I'm going to build in my interest costs for that 3-month period while I'm renovating and all that stuff. I'm not getting that complicated. We're keeping it simple here. But then looking at the overall return, that's one of the better returns I've seen on something relatively turnkey. I mean, I know that's not completely turnkey. Yeah. There's a little reno to do, but I mean, a lot of people, if you think about the last few years, people are doing full duplex conversions. This isn't that. It's a a very basic level of probably some fireproofing, separation.
It's all there.
And most of the work's done. That's pretty cool. Do you see any potential hangups here? And what are some of the things that you would say, like a buyer, if it was your client, would want to be looking out for?
Yeah. The obviously, when you get into renovations, whether it's 10K, 5K, 20K, 300,000, you got to build on that contingency.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something that the client, I have a lot of clients say, okay, well, the contractor said this, and I go, great. So add 4% in.
Yeah.
Right? Add 5% in. You never know. You're going to open a wall. These are, these are heritage homes.
Yeah.
Right. They're older homes.
It's not heritage designation.
No, not heritage
but
designation,
it's old,
but
it's it's like 150 years old. But that's character. Like that's a character home.
Yeah. And it adds flair, like exposed brick wall, exposed beams.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want to build that contingency.
Sure.
And so for me, that was a big one. And then other than that, it's all positives. Like I had a kind of a hard time finding negatives on this one.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of things I want to test here. So one, let's say, what if our maintenance is actually closer to like 6%, and then management, if we have to pay like your traditional manager at 8%, if you wanted to do that, there's still cash in the deal at surface value here. Big benefit to not going with the more units is you can use that 30-year AM. If you go with 5+ units, now you're limited to a 25-year AM unless you go with the CMHC program, which is harder to do. This is like you can go to your bank and you should be able to make this work if you can qualify. So,
and I just want to go back to your cash flow, Andrew. You said 600 a month?
I had 600 based on those previous assumptions.
So I have 1,000 based on the assumptions we just went through as well.
Okay, so I have taxes at $3,100. I've got insurance at $2,160. I've got maintenance here. I'll put it back to where it was. So $2,500, $2,544, $2,544 for management. Nothing for utilities, nothing for landscaping, and then I have a miscellaneous of $500 a year.
Okay. And then I got 75% LTV.
Oh, I have 80%.
That's where it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm assuming whoever wants to buy it wants to leverage. I mean, now when real estate values are coming down, maybe it's not a bad idea to maybe leverage less. And then I had to acknowledge here, I had a 3% passive appreciation built in here. I don't think that's a wise idea with what's happening in the market. So let's just get rid of that. And then let's look at a return. So then that actually brings the return down to 10%.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to like, are you bullish or bearish on the real estate values? One thing that I like here is that there is a cash on cash return. So just over 4%. And of course, in the short term, anything could happen. But I mean, if we're thinking 10 to 20 years down the line, yeah, it's very, very possible that our values are going up at an average of 2, 3, 4% a year. Again, we were in that time period. I think right now our market's just kind of correcting for what it did do that was a little out of hand, which was the 20, 30% a year increases that we were seeing.
Exactly. So, and then again, so I just want to wrap it up by kind of going back to that buyer profile.
Yeah.
Right. So we looked at this deal. We say, okay, there's cash flow in the deal. So I think the buyer profile here, Andrew, is again, somebody who's got a bit of cash, right? Maybe they're looking at commercial, maybe they're looking at residential, right? Yeah. I see better opportunities as of right now today. Yeah. Right. Where are we? End of September. Right. And I see better opportunities in the residential duplex market right now than I do in the large multifamily. Just because of the way the market's corrected.
Yeah, as a generality. Of course there's going to be outliers.
That's it, right? So I think it's someone who says, hey, I want some cash flow today, right? I don't want to expose myself to turnover risk, right? Of trying to turn over a big building or anything like that. Right? Let's get a vacant property, lease it up with the tenants we want, be comfortable with cash flow, running a conservative pro forma. And, again, in a year and a half to 2 years, let's reassess and look to either refi or sell, right? If the market comes back as I believe it would.
Yeah, and I think like for me, I'd want to be comfortable hanging on to it for the longer term. I'd want to be, if I buy an asset like this, I'm thinking, hey, whatever happens in the market, I like that there's cash flow, but I acknowledge, hey, I might have to hang on to this for 10 years. Yep. And I got to be okay with that. The other thing is I would acknowledge that there's an opportunity probably down the road if we could continue to see the upward rate pressure that pushes down real estate values, it should actually keep pushing rents up. Yeah. So there is potential to get more of a return there. And then, of course,
you're looking at that third unit potential.
Yeah, right? The third unit potential. Now, that's something where now you can take $5,300 a month and say maybe even add on an extra $2,000 or $1,800.
Yeah, $1,750, $1,800.
Yeah,
right.
And so now all of a sudden the numbers can get a lot juicier. You just got to figure do I have to spend $100,000 to get that unit ready? Yeah,
most likely, maybe even more.
So if you're spending 100 or 150, you can even do a quick number on that. So say I'm spending 150,000, and I think it can get me an extra 1,800 a month times 12, that's 21,600 a year on 150 investment. So your return on investment on that additional dollar spent would be 14.4%. Yeah. Assuming those assumptions are all true. Just some ideas to keep in mind of how this property could potentially be monetized. Of course, Hamilton, there's a lot of demand for rentals. Yep. That's something that's been pretty strong across Southern Ontario in recent months, is that rents have been pushed up because a lot of would-be buyers are now renting. That's it. So something to keep in mind.
And especially with a better quality rental, right? Let's just very briefly touch on that. Yeah. This is a nice rental, right? This is something that you're going to get quality tenants, right? And it's in a good pocket. So those would-be buyers are now going to be attracted to something like this over your, run-of-the-mill apartment or...
Yeah. Hey, for me, I'm always looking for something that I would live in myself. If I own it, I want it to be something I would live in. For rightly or wrongly, that's been my approach.
I guess, that's plan what? Yeah. That's plan Z, right? You go through all the other plans and it's, we're moving in. Okay.
Yeah. Worst case, I can move in. Okay, guys, if you have your own deal that you'd like us to review on the show, send it to Jake. That's Jacob at reccanada.com, and we'll actually review it right on the show. Potentially, we'll take a look at it first, but let us know a little bit about it. Send us the basics, details, the numbers, and then we can crunch those numbers on the show.
Active deals that you've locked up and you just wanted another opinion on, right? If you're comfortable sharing it with us,
preferably active deals, because that's the nature of the show. We want to give people a taste of stuff that's actually available, what you can actually do in the market right now.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for checking out another episode of REI Hot Seat. Thanks again to Jake for being on the show. You're going to see a lot of that face and this one too. So appreciate you guys. See you on the next one.